So everyone, welcome to the Doctor Interested webinar series. My name is Adil Mukhi, and I am the Executive Director at Doctor Interested. It's my pleasure to be hosting you guys today. We do ask if you are comfortable, please have your cameras on. Please remain muted unless you're speaking and stay engaged through the chat feature. Before we begin, we would also like to acknowledge that this event is being organized in Mississauga, Ontario, which is situated on the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. As we gather virtually today, we encourage all of our participants to reflect on the lands they're joining from, and we ask you to recognize the enduring presence and contributions of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, now known as Canada, and the greater world. With that, we would also like to remind you that this webinar series is part of our certificate stream. I believe if you have been attending webinars, then you can still sign up for the stream. However, if you're just starting now, then it is a little too late. And with that, I am very happy to introduce our speaker, Chinthala. She has joined Doctor Interested to help students find clarity and confidence in their journeys, whether that is through research, academics, or discovering their place in the world of medicine. As a medical student at the Chinthala University of Medicine and Pharmacy, she has taken on leadership roles, mentored peers, and contributed to both creative and academic projects that foster growth and collaboration. She is passionate about supporting others and focuses on guiding students through research opportunities, academic planning, and sharing lessons learned along the way. She is always open to meaningful connections and committed to making the path smoother for those who follow. And today, we're very happy to have her join us and talk about demystifying research papers, from a literature review to a publication. With that, I'll hand it over to her.
Hello. Hello everyone. I'm Trisha. I'm a third year medical student. And I'm studying in Vietnam, but I'm originally from India. And my goal today is to make the research process less intimidating, more doable, especially for those of us who don't have easy access to labs or supervisors. So, yeah, demystifying research papers from literature review to publication, a practical guide for students and young researchers. And if you're talking about why research, research is basically a systematic generation of knowledge, builds critical thinking, clinical reasoning, and academic credibility. Small, rigorous contributions move fields forward. So, if you're talking more about why research, research isn't just experiments, it's a systematic way to find answers. All papers must follow the same basic logic. Let's just say simply put, it's basically we ask a question, plan, collect, analyze, and then share. Whether it's qualitative, like interviews, thematic analysis, or quantitative, surveys, lab, or data. The idea is always to ask meaningful questions and find evidence based answers. Think of research as structured curiosity. You don't need a lab to start, you need a clear question and a systematic approach. So, this is basically the process, simply put, in few steps. We start with a literature review. If we have an idea of in which direction that we want to proceed, we'll start with a literature review. Then we identify the gap, and then we form a research question. Then we follow the protocol. Then the data collection, analysis of the data collection. Then we'll come to a result, and then we'll discuss the results, and then the publication. Next slide, please. And these are some of the quick pitfalls, or like, let's just say what not to do. Picking vague topics or copying the topics without a gap, doing a superficial literature review and randomly reading, collecting data without a clear question or plan, ignoring journals, instructions, ethics, or reproducibility. Yeah, this is a pre-study checklist that gives you an idea on how to follow some of the rules before starting. Confirming feasibility, which is like time, access to the resources, assembling team and roles, which is data, stats, and ethics, drafting timeline, budget, securing resources, funding also if needed, preparing data management plan and storage solution, deciding on pre-registration, plan for ethics submission and consent documents. And if you're talking about literature review right now, for literature review, we basically we'll start with defining the scope and the research question area, and then building search strings such as keyword synonyms and Boolean operators. Search databases such as PubMed, Scopus, Web of Design, Google Scholar. Record and then search results. Then screen titles, abstracts, full text using inclusion exclusion criteria. Extract key data into literature matrix. And literature matrix is nothing but a format table with author, year, design, findings, and gap. Synthesize the themes, contradictions, and trends. If we talk more about the literature review, it is basically the foundation of your research. The literature review helps you understand what's already known, find gaps, and refine your question. Use databases like PubMed, Google Scholar, Scopus, and also ResearchGate. And read critically. What question did they ask? What method did they use? What were their limitations? Create a table to summarize key studies. This keeps your notes organized. And also, you can use tools like Zotero and Mendeley or Notion to manage references and highlights. Yeah, next. Yeah. And if you're, can you go to the previous slide, please? Yes. Identifying the research gap. If you're talking, research gap here is very important and crucial step because this is where we'll be forming a question. Map recurring findings and consistent conclusions. Highlight contradictions or weak evidence areas. Look for underrepresented populations, methods, and timeframes. Assess practical relevance and clinical impact. And also write a concise gap statement. Despite X, Y is unknown or uncertain. Validate gap with a mentor or recent review articles. Yeah, next slide. Formulating the research question and objectives. Convert gap into a clear, focused question. Use PICO, PECO for clinical. PICO is nothing but population, it's an abbreviation for population, intervention, exposure, comparison, and outcome. And define primary and secondary objectives and outcomes. Operationalize variables, how each variable is measured. State hypothesis, directional or non directional. Pilot instruments, measures if possible. Finalize a question and the success criteria. Now, if we're talking about the protocol and study design, select a study design, be it cross sectional, cohort, RCT, case, or systematic review, and justify your choice. Determine sampling method and calculate sample size. Define inclusion exclusion criteria, recruitment plan, randomization, and blinding, if applicable, that is. Choose validated measurement instruments and translate. Adapt if needed. Draft standard operating procedures for data collection, and pre-register your protocol and submit ethics application. And now, if we're talking more about choosing the right research type, pick your research design based on your question. Descriptive, that is for understanding characteristics such as surveys. Analytical, for comparing or finding associations. Experimental, for testing cause and effect. Qualitative, for exploring experiences or meanings. Your paper type depends on what you want to show. Each type demands a different sampling method, ethical requirements, and tools. We'll go through these in the next slide. Now, the data collection and quality control. Train data collectors and run pilot data collection. Use standardized forms, CRFs, or electronic tools. Obtained informed consent, keep logs of recruitment and withdrawals. Implement data entry procedures and double check entries. Backup data securely, maintain de identification and access the logs. Monitor for missing data and implement handling rules. Yeah, next slide. Now, for data analysis, create a data dictionary and clean data sheet, which does the range checks and outliers. Conduct descriptive statistics, check assumptions for tests. Pre-specify primary analysis and any adjustment variables. Use appropriate statistical tests. Run sensitivity analysis and handle missing data, keep analysis reproducible, and scripts and versions control. Next slide. Before result preparation, I would like to talk about sampling and sample size. So, sampling basically is who you study and how many, and that defines your data quality. Sampling is where you choose who or what you'll collect data from, be it patients, students, etc. Random sampling is unbiased but harder to do. Convenient sampling is easier but less generalizable. Sample size is where you basically calculate the sample size it using online calculators like OpenAPI. It depends on your population, confidence level, and expected effect size. Always justify your sample size, and because reviewers look for that. And for results preparation, draft clear tables with baseline, primary, and secondary outcomes, and also figures with labeled and which are readable. Place key findings in the text. Avoid repeating tables verbatim. Report effect sizes, confidence intervals, and exact p-values. Include supplementary materials for extended analysis or raw data as allowed. Ensure consistency between abstract results and then the tables. I would like to talk a little bit about the tools, measurement, and data collection. For tools, use validated tools and standardized methods. And also use validated questionnaires and measurement tools. Do not invent the new ones unless necessary. And check the reliability. Use electronic data collection tools such as Google Forms, maybe Kobo Toolbox. Keep data de identified, no names, no ID numbers or phone numbers. Store data securely, password protected drives, or maybe encrypted cloud storage. And if you're talking about the ethics and registration, even independent researchers must follow ethical standards. Ethical approval is if you're an independent researcher, look for local or institutional ethics committees. Many universities also accept the applications from external researchers. If your project involves humans, you must submit a protocol with informed consent forms. Follow international standards, Declaration of Helsinki, ICMR guidelines, and WHO standards. Informed consent is explain what the study is about, that participation is voluntary and participants can withdraw anytime. De identification is remove personal identifiers to protect the privacy. And for registration, for interventional studies, register on clinicaltrials.gov or your national trial registry. And for surveys, OSF is a great place to register. IMARD is also a format that I would like to talk about. It's basically introduction, methods, results, and discussions. And this is how most journals want your paper to be structured. And while conducting the study, collect the data systematically and record everything. Create a standard operating procedure, which I've already talked about. And this also ensures consistency, even if it's just you doing the study. Pilot your questionnaire first to catch errors. Keep a research journal. It's the best tool for your troubleshoot or for troubleshooting late. And for writing and publication, follow IMR-AD format, which is introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And check for COPE guidelines for ethical publishing. Avoid predatory journals. And you can publish in student journals or open access repositories if you are just starting out. And always acknowledge your sources and contributors properly. Uh, Manuscript finalization and submission. Identify 2 to 3 target journals. Be it keep scope, audience, and indexing in your mind while looking for journals. Read and apply author guidelines with the format, word limits, reference style. Prepare cover letter highlighting novelty and fit. Ensure all required documents for ethics, COI, funding statements, supplementary files. Convert figures, tables to required formats. Submit via journal platform, note tracking, and then do the note tracking of the number and timelines. Yeah, next slide, please. And responding to the peer review, read reviews thoroughly, uh, list each comment separately, draft a point by point response document, implement changes in manuscripts, mark revisions clearly. Where you disagree, provide a concise referenced rebuttal. Resubmit the prompt with response letter and revised files. If rejected, revise or choose next appropriate journal. And if you're talking about the post acceptance and dissemination, review proofs carefully and return corrections promptly. Complete copyright license agreements, deposit data code where required, and include data availability statement. Prepare plain language summary, graphical abstract, and social media posts. Present at conferences and add to ResearchGate or CID in LinkedIn. Monitor citations and altmetric and plan the follow up studies. And if you're talking about getting your first paper out, be it case reports and narrative reviews or small cross sectional studies, are good first projects. Collaborate online for you can try collaborating on ResearchGate, OSF, Reddit Academia, Discord research communities. And from in my opinion, the goal for your first paper isn't perfection, it's just completion. Most of what I shared today comes from what I've picked up along the way, often without direct guidance, just by exploring and trying to make sense of what's out there. I realized a lot of information online is very surface level, so I wanted to put together something practical that could genuinely help. And I'll also share my notes with Adil so he can pass them along if anyone's interested. But I hope today's session gave you some clarity or direction to start your own journey. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much, Shantala. That was really amazing. As we all know, we always have time for Q&A at the end. I have shared the attendance form into the chat. If anybody does have questions, me and Shantala can try to answer them. I have also done a little bit of research, so maybe I can be a little bit of help here. How consistently should we and where do we analyze when creating a research paper for every paragraph or section to make edits and add or delete extra information? How consistently should we and where do we analyze when creating a research paper? Um,
Um,
I don't fully understand what you mean in the question. If you just want to clarify a little bit more. Okay, here's another one. So, what is the difference between literature review and working with data? Is there any big difference or is it about the same?
uh, it's mostly similar only because literature review is also from the data that's pre-existing, where you sort it out according to your requirements. So it's mostly similar, is what I think.
Yeah. Also in my experience, I found that it is quite similar. The only thing is with data analysis, you're more likely to have like bigger tables of data you usually re-include. Along with that, it sometimes is more software heavy depending on how big your data sets are. But most of the major parts, abstract conclusion, they follow about the same thing as a literature review. It's just whether it's quantitative or qualitative of the paper.
Right.
Um, I think Vishal is trying to rework the question. Um, yeah. Oh, here's another one. How big do you recommend our abstract to be? So I guess
Uh,
word count.
yeah, and
So again, in my experience, I've seen it varies. But I think Chintala will probably have a better answer, seeing that they're in med school. But I think, yeah, I'll let her answer.
yeah, it depends on the type of research paper that you're going for also. If it's a typical research paper, most journals set for 150 to 250 words. And for structured abstracts with headings like background, methods, research, results, and conclusion, up to 300 words maybe, depending on the journal and the conference limits. So,
Um,
yeah.
I know a lot of times I've seen when I'm publishing, like they will have limits on their abstracts. So like either like on ResearchGate, they'll just like have a limit in the bird box they're putting it in, or like on the journal, they'll say they like their abstracts about this length. So it does vary quite a
Right.
bit. So it is worth double checking. Yeah, so I think he finished off the question. So like when adding information or when we have completed the paper, do we check 2 to 3 times and how do I check in detail? So I think like checking whether information is relevant or not in detail in a paper, like revising the paper. So how would you recommend somebody revises their paper once it's finished?
Uh, yeah, I would like, so for me, what I do is I would go through it entirely, maybe twice. I just read it entirely twice. Because yeah, that's when you catch the errors or something which is not relevant being in there. If you,
Yeah.
yeah,
Another question we just got is what are figures and tables? I guess they picked that up in the last question.
oh, yeah. What are, what figures and tables is he exactly talking about?
I guess they just want a general. A lot of our participants are in high school, so I think they just want like a general explanation of what they would be.
Right. It's just to put the data that you've looked up for your question in a systematic way. Now, if you're reading a paper, you just put the information which is relevant to you in a systematic way, in a table. And yeah,
Yep. So I think I've had a pretty similar experience. It's just that if you have data like numbers, it's best to format it, and then you'd call that one table you've made a figure, like figure one, figure two, whatever it might be. And the only thing I can tell with figures is that you would group it by relevance. Like if like it's three data sets talking about the same thing, I might call it 1A, 1B, 1C. But then the second data set talking about something separate, like completely different, I would call it figure two instead of doing 1D, kind of like that. Um, okay, here is another question. Do all of the literature reviews have to have one research question? Can we have multiple? Is it fine if we have none?
I feel like you can have multiple, but then having none would lead you nowhere. Having multiple still will, after the literature review, maybe you will end up with a narrower topic. So having multiple is better than having none.
Yep. That also definitely same experience there. Another question I've gotten is if we are including images, are we allowed to include images and how would we do that?
If they if you are the one who took if the source is uh if you are the source of the image, then sure you could include them. But if you got them from elsewhere, from some other resources or maybe from some other papers, then I guess you will need to ask the permission for that.
Yep. So like here, these images, so this is one of my this is a poster, however, not a paper. So there is little differences. And I think the conference wasn't as strict, but like you can see I do the in text here in the caption
Alright.
and it'll pop back up in the references. And again, for the person asking for data, basically it's like this. Now, if this was a paper, I would have probably labeled this figure one. I would have probably, if I were going to include this, I don't even think I would have included this like that, but you would have labeled it figure two and whatnot, just so data is there inside of your paper, and so a person doesn't have to go externally to see the raw data set if they want to. Um, yep, our time is ending. I think there are still a few more questions, so if anyone else has any questions, you can leave it in the help channel of our Discord, and we'll try our best to get to you as soon as we can. With that, thank you everyone for joining. Please make sure to fill out the attendance link I have put it in the chat to make sure that this counts towards the webinar certificate. And yep, you guys are all free to leave. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you so much. All right.